you so much for being with us today. The show is Good Morning Africa. My name is Kutu, and it is a pleasure to have you on board. It is Monday, the 19th of September, 2022. I trust that you had a wonderful weekend and that your week has started off well. Good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're tuned in and joining us from. All right, so before we get into our topic of today, let me first bring us up to date with the latest news headlines from the continent of Africa. We start with the leading newspapers here in Kenya. The main headline on the Standard newspaper: Azimio poll Pact critical in Raila Supremacy battle. Speaker Moses Wetang'ula is faced with a Solomonic moment on who holds majority in parliament. At the heart of the contention is whether Azimio is a coalition or not, as Kenya Kwanza maintains it has the numbers in the National Assembly and Senate. That story is on page 4. Economy is worse than we thought, Gachagua says. The Deputy President says the new government stopped the full subsidy because we can't continue borrowing to fund consumption. He also revealed that the government owes its suppliers more than 500 billion Kenya shillings. He attributed this to public officers deliberately stopping processing pending bills for fear that they will be prosecuted for making the payment. The story is on page 10. Perfect mix of Bible and culture at drama festival. That story is on page 3. Putin under pressure as war drags on. That story is on page 30. KQ to resume daily flights to New York. That story is on page 25. And Arsenal back at the top after easy win. That story is on page 40. On the Standard newspaper, we turn our attention to the Daily Nation and the main headline: Gachagua in charge. Regarding Gachagua, the political greenhorn who only got to parliament 5 years ago to serve a single term, he boasts of no political pedigree or dogmatic aristocracy, and who beat a star-studded cast to become William Ruto's running mate, is now acting president after the head of state left yesterday for London and New York. That story is on page 4 and 5 on the Daily Nation. Lost allure of the UK monarchy as Queen Elizabeth II is laid to rest. The shine is fading from the crown. That story is on page 2 and 3. 2 Kenyan nurses caught in 12 billion Kenya shillings US scam. One has pleaded guilty. Will know her fate in January. That story is on page 12. By elections loom as Ruto lines up cabinet. Ndindi Nyoro, the MP for Kiharu, could be appointed minister. Moses Wetang'ula, former Bungoma senator, is now National Assembly Speaker. Aden Duale, MP for Garissa Township, is eyeing cabinet. Kipchumba Murkomen, Elgeyo Marakwet senator, could be minister. As jostling for power in Ruto's government hots up, the likely lineup of his cabinet is throwing a number of surprises should he tap the politicians. A series of by-elections would ensue. The story is on page 6. Waiguru, this is my plan to ensure devolution works. The Kirinyaga governor, who clinched the second term at the helm of the county and was this weekend elected chairperson of the Council of Governors, outlines plans that will shape her tenure and cites the disbursement of funds and anchoring the council secretariat in law as priority areas. That story is on page 10 on the Daily Nation. We look at the Star newspaper. The main headline: Jitters in Kenya Kwanza as Ruto finalises cabinet. President faces a tough balancing act in delivering 50% of posts to women. And I'm sure the Kenyan women are just watching now. The story is on page 4 and 5. Interior Ministry left a shell as funds go to IG. The powerful Ministry of Interior is set to lose financial muscle following the designation of Inspector General of Police as the accounting officer of the National Police Service. The entire NPS budget will be cut from the ministry and managed by the Office of the Inspector General. The story is on page 2. Drought worsens in 3 more ASOL counties. More Kenyans are quickly sinking into starvation as the ravaging drought worsens in Laikipia, Tana River, Tharaka Nithi counties. They have now entered the alarm phase. The National Drought Management Authority says the situation is worsening across 20 of the 23 arid and semi-arid counties. That story is on page 9. Irrigation ends food aid and silences guns. A 30-year-old Waiwei irrigation scheme in West Pokot County is steadily supplying food and producing more than 80 tons of food and seeds annually. The region, classified as semi-arid, initially relied on famine relief due to poor rainfall. I don't know. This could be one of the ingenious ways we could, apply or implement to address the issue of food, security in the country. So if an area is West Pokot is doing so well as, by integrating irrigation to, produce food, why can't that be applied across, a majority of these counties now in Kenya? So I think it's just goodwill and good leadership that perhaps even lacks in some of these counties, like we've seen in the past. And of course, the main pictorial on the Star newspaper: President flies to the UK and US in fast foreign trip, and First Lady Rachel Ruto and President William Ruto are seen off to the UK by Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua at JKIA yesterday. Eyes on Wetang'ula as Azimio and Kenya Kwanza fight over House majority. Now, this will be interesting to see how it will be unfolding in Parliament there. The story is on page 7 on the Star newspaper. So before we get into the conversations and just look at some of the stories, I'd like to bring us up to date with the latest, some of the news from across Africa and others from the world. And we'll start with one from the UK. The Daily Telegraph: a life of selfless service. That is the main headline. The Guardian: world leaders descend as nation prepares for grandest of farewells. And the Daily Monitor: Museveni speaks out on Muhonzi's parties. Okay, Muhonzi, that is Museveni's son. Okay. And new vision from Uganda as well: schools to buy food from certified farms. Final goodbye. Queen Elizabeth II, that is the on the front page of the New Vision. The Newsday from Zimbabwe: Musengezi case rattles ZANU PF. And Daily News from Zimbabwe as well: unions pile heat on pressed government on civil servants demand fresh pay hikes, threaten a strike. There's always something going on in Zimbabwe. The Nation from Nigeria: strike reps ASUU meet over face-off with government tomorrow. Why Nigeria in diaspora must mobilize for Tinubu. The story is on page 5. All aspirants to Alafin stool qualified, says Oyemesi. And other stories on the front page on The Nation from Nigeria. The Guardian from Nigeria: last mile infrastructure stalls 3 billion submarine cable investments. That is what we have there. So that is just some of the few newspapers we have from across Africa and others from the UK. Thank you so much for your now you're up to date. Thank you so much for watching. We are joined by Samuel Tawish, our in-house journalist and also analyst and Punchline Africa Television. Samuel Tawish, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning indeed to you, Miriam Ogutu, from our head office. Good morning to all our viewers watching this program in Kenya, Africa, and the rest of the world. And indeed, at a time when we're bidding farewell, or rather the final respect to Queen Elizabeth II. And it's a great moment, much as the world continues to mourn her demise. But again, we celebrate her life because of the so many positive impacts that she has left globally. And I think just as we continue even with this program, I noticed that there's a dedication, a special dedication really, to provide full coverage by Punchline Africa TV in as regards to the, of course, the funeral service that is ongoing as we speak now. That is very, very positive of Punchline Africa TV. And indeed all our viewers globally who are watching and continue to watch this television, that also we can be able to really give that special attention and special coverage to that very momentous occasion. Miriam, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. And before we get into the conversation, I almost forgot, we also have other news making headlines. Remember, it's Good Morning Africa. Before we get into the main topic and what is expected, the final journey of Queen Elizabeth II there in London, let me first bring us up to date with what is happening across the continent of Africa very quickly, and then we'll get into some of these conversations. We'll start with Some news from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and 250 Ukrainian troops with the UN peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo have returned home to help fight Russian forces. When the withdrawal of Ukrainian aviation unit was announced in March, diplomats warned it could leave the UN mission seriously short of helicopters. These are vital in the fight against the various rebel groups based in the thick forest of Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The 8 Ukrainian helicopters made up about a third of the UN fleet. Since the Russian invasion in February, Ukraine had already pulled out its troops from the other UN peacekeeping mission where they had been deployed. Jacques Njoli, who serves on DR Congo's Parliamentary Defense Committee, told the media that the withdrawal was relatively serious. However, he pointed out that bringing peace to the country was primarily the responsibility of the Congolese government. As the Ukrainians left DR Congo, Brazilian commander of the UN force, General Marcos da Costa, said that 10 years of immense contribution was greatly appreciated. The UN mission in the DR Congo, MONUSCO, is already under pressure in the country. And then we go to South Sudan, and the Minister of Interior and Justice have asked to be given more time before endorsing a proposal seeking South Sudan's signature on the UN Convention against transnational crimes and its protocols. The convention was adopted by a resolution of the United Nations General Assembly on 15th December 2000 and came into force on the 29th September 2003. So far, 185 member states have signed the convention, but 9 UN member states, including South Sudan, DR Congo, Somalia, Solomon Islands, Iran, and among others, are not a party to the document. Speaking during a meeting of the senior leadership of the Ministry of Justice and the Interior in Juba last week, Interior Minister General Mahmoud Solomon say they are not okay with some provisions in the document and need more time to study the proposal. Mahmoud also stated that the government is suspicious of US pressuring it into signing the convention. And Eritrea is mobilizing military reservists to bolster the army, which has been aiding neighboring Ethiopia in a fight against rebel forces. Security forces in many areas have been stopping people to check if they exempt from the military conscription. Now, groups of men were crying as they bid farewell to relatives. Witnesses say many in the capital Asmara were given notice on Thursday and moved to the border with Ethiopia's Tigray region within hours. That is according to sources who spoke to the BBC. Reservists up to age of 55 have been called up. They said Eritrea has compulsory decades-long military service, which has been widely criticized by human rights groups. But analysts say the latest mobilization efforts are linked to the civil war in northern Ethiopia, a conflict that recently flared up against after 5 months of relative peace. Flared up again, sorry. And then Senegal President Macky Sall on Saturday named a new prime minister, a position he abolished in 2019 and reinstated last year after July's intense legislative elections. A presidential decree named Amadou Ba, a former foreign minister, as the new premier of the divided country. 5 days after the return of parliament, which was marked by a series of incidents and carried out under heavy security. Ba has served under Sall as finance minister between 2013 and 2019 before becoming foreign minister in 2019 until 2020. Sall promised to appoint a figure from the winning party in the polls, his coalition narrowing won the election but was only able to keep its absolute majority with the support of the opposition MP. In a speech to the nation broadcasted on Friday, Sall said the new prime minister will be responsible for addressing the rising cost of living. When Sall removed the premier role, the opposition and parts of the civil society denounced his attempt to seize greater power. Concerns over his rule persist, and some accuse him of wanting to break the 2-term limit and run again in 2024. Authorities on Friday banned a concert which was meant to be held on Saturday and organized by civil society groups promoting limited mandates in Africa because of what authorities said were the risks of unrest triggering a wave of anger on social media. Okay. And then we head over to Somalia. A government-allied Somali militia killed at least 45 Al-Shabaab fighters and beheaded some of them, 3 witnesses said on Sunday, as citizens in central regions of the country increasingly take up arms against the insurgents. The beheadings on Saturday followed a battle in the Hiram region of Hirshabelle state, where there had been significant fighting this month between Al-Shabaab and the newly expanded militias allied with the federal government. Al-Shabaab and Al-Qaeda, an Al-Qaeda-linked Islamist group, has been fighting Somalia's weak central government since 2006. It wants to implement a strict interpretation of the Sharia law. Al-Shabaab has increasingly burned houses, destroyed wells and beheaded civilians in the Hiran region. Residents say the combined with its demand for taxes amidst the worst drought in 40 years has pushed more residents to take up arms. Videos widely shared on Telegram showed at least 2 beheaded alleged Al-Shabaab fighters and dozens more bodies in fatigues and red and white checkered scarves. Some of the head appear to have died in a battle. Some of the dead. Okay. And the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, is releasing $100 million from its Central Emergency Response Fund to assist millions of people in what it calls forgotten emergencies. OCHA reports money for 11 humanitarian operations in Africa, Asia and the Americas and the Middle East has dried up, putting the lives and livelihoods of millions of people at risk. The United Nations says it needs $49.5 billion this year to assist 204 million people threatened by conflict, climate shocks, hunger and forced displacement. To date, only $17.6 billion of this total amount has been received. While this is a large amount of money, OCHA Deputy Spokesperson Jens Lark said the funding gap is nearly $32 billion, the largest it has ever been. And he said the release of $100 million is meant to shrink this critical funding gap and address the problem head on. And we head over to Namibia. The first green hydrogen power plant being built in Africa is expected to begin producing electricity in Namibia in 2024. An official from France-based HDF Energy told Reuters news agency this week. That presents something of a dilemma to Namibia, which is championing the clean energy, but also said this month that huge oil deposits had been discovered off its coast after many failed attempts at drilling. Green hydrogen is produced by using renewable energy like wind and sun, both of which Namibia has in abundance, and the rest of African countries, to power the electrolysis of water. A plant producing green hydrogen, a clean power source that can potentially be used for industry and electric vehicles, is due to open in less than 2 years. But at the same time, oil companies Shell and Total recently discovered the oil deposits estimated to amount to more than 1 billion barrels, about 290 kilometers off the Namibian coast. Minister of Mines and Energy Tom Aluendu said even if Namibia did begin to produce oil, it will not have competition from it would have competition from other African countries, and citizens should not expect a financial windfall from oil revenue. And with the discovery of oil, I think I'll start paying attention keenly on what will be happening in Namibia. Hopefully we'll not see any conflict beginning to arise, because we know this has been a source of a curse and a blessing at the very same time, the natural resources, especially oil. So Namibia has been peaceful, so let's see, hopefully it stays that way, and that oil, the people of Namibia get to benefit. And we end with some news from Nigeria, where hundreds of Boko Haram jihadists have fled a forest enclave in northeast Nigeria, escaping airstrikes by the military and plans from the territorial reigns to seek shelter on Niger's side of Lake Chad. Sources has told the AFP northeast Nigeria is facing a 13-year armed insurgency by jihadist groups that has killed more than 40,000 people and forced about 2 million from their homes. The violence has spilled into neighboring Niger, Chad and Cameroon, with the jihadists maintaining camps in the Verse Lake Chad region, straddling the four countries. The Nigerian security source said Boko Haram militants have been leaving the Sambisa forest since last month because of sustained bombing of their hideouts. Nigeria has also recorded a more intensive rainy season, which usually runs from May through to September, and floods have hit almost every part of the country. So that is the latest news from across the continent of Africa. Samuel Tawish, a very good morning to you.
Good morning once more, Miriam.
All right. So maybe you were listening before we get into our conversation, and perhaps we will move. We will link up with what is happening in London. Anything you've picked from the other news from across the continent that perhaps you'd like to speak about?
Well, so much, because Miriam, with every elapsing day, with every elapsing minute, you get to notice that there are new things that continue to happen. Especially with the good news you talked about, the issue of the oil in Namibia, or the prospects of oil in Namibia. I think it's great news for Namibia, and more so for the continent of Africa, that every now and then individual countries in the African continent continue to discover the oil exploits. Of course, in our continent of Africa, this is great news, because again, this remains a very precious commodity today, not only in Africa, but the rest of the world. And one which, if you well utilized, of course, has the potential to turn around the economy of the individual countries, if not the whole continent. And therefore, it's great news, not only for Namibia, but I think for the entire continent of Africa. But again, it should serve as a great reminder to the people of Namibia that in the face of this discovery today in Namibia, they should also be very careful and pay extra vigilance in as far as avoiding the external forces, or rather those who will want to exploit these, of course, oil deposits in Namibia, really to the disadvantage of the people of Namibia. Because again, we've seen history shows us, Miriam, that every other country that discovers these precious commodities, including gold, gas, diamond, and others, have always but had difficulties, problems. We've had uprisings, we've had civil unrest, we have had people begin fighting amongst themselves, posing this very, very important question. Is oil turning into a curse instead of being a blessing? Because it being a precious commodity, it should then be one of those factors that should be able to boost the economy, should be able to see into it that people's lives are being empowered, and people's livelihood are also being improved. But that has not been the case in most of the African countries. So we want to hope and have this bear this optimism that in the face of this oil discovery in Namibia, that it's going to serve to the best interest of the people of Namibia and the entire continent of Africa. It's quite impressive, it's quite encouraging, and we also want to hope. For example, look to Kenya. We discovered the oil in Turkana just a couple of years ago, but as to why the same has not been exploited this far, there's not so much news coming from that part of Kenya, in Turkana. What is happening with the oil deposits in Turkana? We had begun so well, but suddenly things appear to have gone silent. I don't understand what is happening. So we want to see how this is going to be done, more so for the benefit of the people of Namibia, and also in respect to the ones I've mentioned in Kenya. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Miriam.
All right, thank you so much. What has really caught my attention on this story, and maybe you could, it's an observation I've made, that a lot of these oil discoveries that are being done, especially across Africa, Total Oil has to be in the middle. I'm not saying anything. I don't know whether Total Oil has the best, technology as far as discovering this oil and drilling this oil. I'm not sure, but it's just an observation I've made that anywhere, even in Uganda, I think the oil that was deposits that were discovered, Total Oil, I think discovered it. I don't know if they had anything to do with the oil that was discovered in Kenya, and I don't know how far that has gone. But across Africa, Total Oil, from France is usually one of the key oil companies to do the discovery or to be involved. Is it not interesting?
It is indeed interesting, Miriam, but again, we have to give it to them. It's just like courses, for example, here in Kenya, you'll notice if one wanted to pursue, say, for example, a journalism course, one will give priority, say, to Daystar University or Nairobi University for that matter, or sometimes USIU. You go to engineering, they'll maybe prefer to go to Jomo Kenyatta. You go to other courses, you'll find there's preference and it appears like the companies which are well poised and placed really to do the best of exploration when it comes to different sectors. And in this case of oil, Miriam, I think the Total Oil has carved a niche for itself. And they have, emerged as the best oil explorers in the world today. And that's why you see their name appears to be very consistent in everything to do with oil discovery or exploration in the world today. So, but away from all that, there's also been so much talk about, of course, Total Oil and France and the destabilization of the nations that have discovered this precious commodity. And I think these are some of the issues that we will perhaps want to see Total Oil, and in that respect, France being able really to address so that we do not have this so much of misgiving as regards to their participation. Is it more of genuine? Is it a genuine exploration? And all these precious commodities, we want to see them really come back to benefit. Rather, the revenue or the resources that come out of this must really come out to benefit the people, if not the countries that these discoveries really take place. Because again, it's not enough for countries really to take joy and pride in discovering these oil deposits. But by the end of the day, we're not seeing so much in terms of how it is going to turn around the livelihood of the people. I think that is where the bottom line is, because we cannot continue to have an impoverished nations or continent when we have these precious commodities. If well explored, Miriam, then it's going to turn around the economy of this continent. I think those are some of the pertinent issues that will need individual countries and stakeholders in this very critical and precious commodity to be able to address, so that as much as Total Oil has come out as the best expertise in oil exploration, they must also be able really to demonstrate to the continent of Africa and to the individual countries that they are doing this not only to benefit their own nation, but to benefit the people, the people where these deposits have been discovered or really realized, Miriam.
Okay, thank you so much. And of course, our main topic is we shall be looking at the Queen's final journey today. But before we get into that, I want us to look at, before you get to the supremacy battle that is looming in Parliament, and that might require what we term as Solomonic wisdom from Wetang'ula, who is the National Assembly Speaker. Eritrea is mobilizing military reservists to bolster the army, which has been aiding neighboring Ethiopia in its fight against rebel forces. And Eritrea has been accused of committing a lot of atrocities. They do share a border with the Tigrayan region there in Ethiopia, and it has been accused of aiding the government of Ethiopia in fighting the TPLF. And of course, Eritrea has refused to these claims, but there has been very substantial evidence to show that is true. And now you see that they are recruiting and actually forcing people, young men, to join the army in readiness for a fight. Are we just sitting here, Samuel Tavish, because we've seen this conflict in Ethiopia, in northern Ethiopia, continue from last year in November, and it shows no sign of stopping. I think a couple of days ago, the TPLF said they are now ready to sit at the negotiating table and talk to the government through mediation efforts by the African Union. And so when you hear Eritrea is recruiting and forcing its young men to join the army in readiness to continue this fighting, are we just sitting on a time bomb? And this war, this conflict, are we treating it with the seriousness that it deserves? Because we know if that Horn of Africa continues to be unstable, that will be a problem to the rest of us in this region.
Absolutely, Miriam, and as you rightly put it, that when we have one of us or one of the nations in Africa really going through such turbulence moments, it boils down to the rest of the continent. And I think the rest of the African countries really need to put so much effort to see into it how, a long-lasting solution can be found in as far as the crisis is concerned. But suffice to say, Miriam, you cannot quite put everything onto hold until maybe the other, or you would say, diplomatic approaches have been exhausted as such. Because again, Eritrea could be doing this recruitment, but not necessarily because they are preparing themselves for war against, say, Ethiopia. I don't think maybe that could be the reason, because by the end of the day, there's so much that the military or even the security apparatus in every respective country really play away from even the, of course, external invasion. Like, for example, going to fight another country or a neighboring country. It's more of also about securing the country within, and it could be what is informing the kind of, spirited effort to recruit more young men and women into the forces. But if it is anything contrary to that, or contrary to the opinion that I hold, I think it is something that is unwelcome, because again, in the face of the approaches and the effort to try and find a truce onto the crisis and conflict that is there, I think it will be premature, really, and it is like going against the spirit of trying to find the solution when they go ahead and begin doing such kind of activities, because it's like more telling the world we are prepared even beyond any kind of initiatives that have been put forth to bring an amicable solution to this problem, that they're even prepared really to go to a full-blown war. I don't think that is what we really need as the African people. I don't think even the ordinary civilians and people in Eritrea today, that is what they really look for, especially from their leadership. It's something that we must really be able to interrogate deeply and see whether it has any positive ramification. Does it have any benefits, not only for the people of Eritrea, but also to the Ethiopia and the rest of the continent? I think every move that government makes or the leadership makes must be in the best interest of the people of that region, and more so also the entire continent. Because by the end of the day, whatever they do in that part of the continent really will have a ripple effect in the rest of the African continent. So I think it's not in the best desire of all of us that will want to see that country or even those two countries really go down the trenches simply because of the antagonistic kind of views that they hold. It is time they have to put aside those very strong position and find a compromise, so that by the end of the day, life has to come back to normalcy, so that we do not want to see the kind of conflicts that are ongoing in that part of the continent. Miriam, I submit.
Very well, I agree with you. And let's look at this Kenyan matter first before we move on to, what's happening there in London today. I'm sure we all know. And the story is on page 4 on the Standard newspaper. And the creation of Raila Odinga's Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition party could stand in the way of his claim for majority position in the National Assembly. President William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza Alliance and Azimio have locked horns over who takes the majority and minority positions in the 13th Parliament. National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetang'ula is expected to rule on the matter, given that politically Kenya Kwanza is the majority in the House, but legally Azimio is the majority. Azimio has 174 MPs against Kenya Kwanza 162. Article 106 of the Constitution provides that there shall be a leader of the majority party and the leader of the minority party. The leader of the majority party shall be the person who is the leader in the National Assembly of the largest party or coalition of parties. The leader of the minority party shall be the person who is the leader in the National Assembly by the second largest party or coalition parties. Kenya Kwanza has insisted they have the majority in the National Assembly, and on Saturday, President William Ruto unveiled Kikuyu MP Kimani Ichung'wah as the majority leader, to be deputized by his Kilifi North counterpart Owen Baya. And Mugirango South MP Silvanus Asoro will be the majority whip in the National Assembly to be deputized by nominated MP Naomi Wako. However, on the same day, Azimio leader Raila picked Ugunja MP Opiyo Wandayi as majority leader in the National Assembly to be deputized by Kathiani MP Robert Mbui, while Suna East MP Junet Mohammed would be majority chief whip, the nominated MP Sabina Chege, the deputy. And I know we had a bit of this conversation yesterday, but how is this likely to play out there in Parliament, and what kind of wisdom should you expect from National Assembly Speaker Moses Wetang'ula?
Miriam, as a country, we are yet again faced with a very big dilemma, and it's a very interesting moment for the country. And I think this scenario played out again, I think, somewhere in 2008, if I'm not very wrong, during the Kenneth Marende time when he was the Speaker of the National Assembly. I remember there was a stalemate, a contestation as regards to who is going to be the leader of government business in the floor of the House between former Prime Minister, the then Prime Minister Raila Odinga, who was the ODM party leader, and of course Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka, who was a Wiper party leader and also doubling up as the vice president then. So it was a very big stalemate, and which called for Solomonic wisdom, which of course the Speaker of the National Assembly then, Kenneth Marende, did exploit so well. And I think by the end of the day, we had what I will call a Solomonic kind of a decision coming from Speaker Ken Marende, because he didn't quite give it to Raila Odinga, and he didn't give it to Kalonzo Musyoka, and he chose to be the one who is going to spearhead, of course, the government business in the floor of the House up until decision was arrived. And I think it was very, very good, because I remember there was a lot of tension in the country by then. We had just come out of the post-poll skirmishes, 2007, 2008, and there was a lot of uncertainty as regards how the Speaker of the National Assembly was going to navigate the Parliament and to a large extent the country out of that stalemate. And I think it was very good of Speaker Ken Marende. So this is the same situation, almost the same situation that the Speaker of the National Assembly today, that is Moses Wetang'ula, really finds himself in. A moment where you have of course, the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition really are commanding a majority of the elected leaders in the National Assembly. And on the other hand, you also have the Kenya Kwanza, which sponsored Moses Wetang'ula as the speaker, really having a slight gap in terms of the difference between the number of elected leaders. I understand that Azimio has about 174 or 73, if I'm not very wrong, while Kenya Kwanza has about 164 in total. But again, Miriam, don't forget that there's an aspect of the independent candidates. And as much as the register of political parties opines that maybe it is this issue is going to be determined by the number of elected leaders in the National Assembly, the question we should be asking ourselves: how come that nominated members of the National Assembly are part of those who are going to be voted in as minority leaders, as majority leaders, and also as majority or minority whips? Because it forms the basis of this discussion so critically, so that it might, if William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza really has managed to tilt the numbers of the independent candidates in their favor, our way to see how Moses Wetang'ula is going really to navigate himself out of this. But again, if you are to go by the numbers of the elected leaders, then Azimio la Umoja has it in terms of the numbers. But again, if it's about the total leaders who now are allied to the Kenya Kwanza, because William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza has played it strategically to make sure that they get almost all the independent candidates on their side. And who knows, perhaps if that is going to be one of the factors really to determine the fate of this stalemate, then perhaps Kenya Kwanza is going to have it by the end of the day. But if we are going to stick by the law and say, for instance, that these coalitions, the post-coalition agreements can only come into effect after 3 months after the election. And we just concluded the election in August, I think, August 9th. So that in effect means we are going to have post-election coalition agreements from November or sometime thereafter. and not at this time. So how that is going to be legally binding to say, for example, people who have been elected on through Azimio coalition really jump shipping and supporting Kenya Kwanza? Is it going to be reflective on the floor of the House when Moses Wetang'ula will be making that particular ruling? But again, whichever way it goes, I'm predicting that we are likely going to see maybe this matter end up even in courts for interpretation as to what does the law really say when it comes to the Political Parties Act, and in terms of party loyalty, because if people who have been elected on Azimio la Umoja coalition ticket jump ship and decide to support Kenya Kwanza, does that then mean that Kenya Kwanza has, gained the majority of members in the floor of the House, and in itself therefore informing that they have to bag the majority seats, the majority position, and the whip position in the floor of the House? So it remains to be a very big stalemate, but we are waiting to see the kind of Solomonic wisdom that Moses Wetang'ula will be exhibiting on the floor of the House. Either way, you've heard him being referred as a Papa wa Roma. Papa wa Roma is more of a person who speaks with some authority that everybody will want really to follow cue. And I think we will want to see that really being reflected on the floor of the House for once now that Moses Wetang'ula is the Speaker of the National Assembly. Miriam.
Okay, so as it stands, UDA is the majority party followed by ODM, which will be the minority party. Azimio as a party does not have a single MP and therefore not a parliamentary party. On the contrary, Kenya Kwanza is still the coalition with majority, so there is no debate about it. That is according to Ibani Chungwa, but Wandai said there is no ruling to be made by the Speaker and Kenya Kwanza was just splitting hairs. We live in a nation governed by the rule of law, and everyone has a duty to defend the Constitution and uphold the rule of law, he said. The Constitution, the Political Parties Act that you've even alluded to, Tawish, and the standing orders are so clear and unambiguous and explicit, there cannot be room for doubt. Suna East MP Junet concurred with Wandai, saying we don't anticipate any debate because the law is unambiguous. Coalition agreements are deposited with the Registrar of Political Parties and have exit clauses anchored in the law unless Ruto's regime wants to start off with lawlessness and disregard of the rule of law. There is no question of who is the majority, he added. We will go to court if the wrong decision is made. So as much as we saw some politicians who are allied to Azimio, One Kenya coalition, shift allegiance to Kenya Kwanza just after the elections, but they have not legally, because there's an exit, there's a proper way to exit a coalition, so they have not taken. I don't know if any of them has initiated, the exit from the Azimio One Kenya coalition, but they've not done that legally. So legally, according to the Political Parties Act and what is in the law and the coalition agreement that Azimio One Kenya Alliance had with the parties that joined it, these people are still there. So I don't know. He will require a lot of, Solomonic, I guess, wisdom there. But they're still bound by the law, according to the Coalition Act, Political Parties Act. Sorry, they are Samultawish. They're still bound by that.
Sure, Miriam, they're still bound by that. But again, there's something I suspect that William Ruto's led Kenya Kwanza is cleverly trying to put into action. For instance, the strategic nomination of these particular appointees or candidates are ready to take up the positions of majority and majority whip and majority leader of majority in both the National Assembly and the Senate. You can clearly see that they have managed to have these leaders really being chosen from only the UDA party. Doesn't that really tell you that there's more than meets the eye? Probably they think the argument that they will want to advance. That is just my observation. The argument they will want to advance, even as we look forward to Wetang'ula really making that decision or verdict, rather ruling in the floor of the House, will be that maybe UDA as an individual party is the majority in the National Assembly. And that is why you see they have not been able to nominate individuals from the affiliate parties within the Kenya Kwanza. All the individuals who have been nominated for those positions, majority leader and the deputy, majority whip and the deputy, in both the National Assembly and the Senate. More so in the National Assembly are those who are those who have been elected through, of course, the UDA party, for that matter, and not more of Kenya Kwanza. So it may be one of those arguments they would want to advance. I just suspect so, because again, what will be informing such kind of a move? And remember also, Wetang'ula, as much as the speaker is supposed to be impartial in as far as his rulings are supposed to, in as far as his rulings are concerned, don't forget that he's politically also sponsored, and he will not want really to do anything that will upset those who sponsored him to that position, and in this case, Kenya Kwanza, and in that respect as well, of course, the President William Ruto. So he will want to, he may want to try as much as possible, really, to persuade, even in his ruling, that maybe that will be the way to go. I do not expect whichever way that Wetang'ula will really rule. Will give a ruling that will seek to upset, of course, Kenya Kwanza or UDA as a party, because again, he stands guided by the fact that he was sponsored and elected.
Mm-hmm. Very well. There seems to be a bit of interference there from Tavisha's side. Okay, so let's just leave the Kenyan politics for there. Let's put a pin on it. This is a developing story, and we will see how that will play out, and the floor of the National Assembly as we wait for the wise National Assembly Speaker, Moses Wetang'ula, to help in guiding that decision. Very well. Now, thousands of police, hundreds of troops and an army of officials made final preparations Sunday for the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II, a spectacular display of national mourning that will also be the biggest gathering of world leaders for years. US President Joe Biden and other dignitaries are in London for the funeral, to which around 500 royals, heads of state and heads of government from around the globe have been invited. Thousands of people continue to line up around the clock to file past the Queen's coffin as it lied in State of Parliament's Westminster Hall, braving chilly overnight temperatures and waits up to 17 hours. The Queen's 8 grandchildren, led by heir to the throne Prince William, circled the coffin and stood with heads bowed during a silent vigil. On Saturday evening, the miles-long queue was closed to a new arrival later yesterday so that everyone in line can file past the coffin before today morning, when it will be borne on a gun carriage to Westminster Abbey for the Queen's funeral. People across the UK paused yesterday evening for a nationwide minute of silence to remember the Queen, who died on September 8th at the age of 96 after 70 years on the throne. Today has been declared a public holiday, and the funeral will be broadcast to a huge television audience and screened to crowds in parks and public spaces across the country. Thousands of police officers from around the country will be on duty as part of the biggest one-day policing operation in London's history. Camilla, the new Queen consort, paid tribute to the Queen in a video message saying the monarch carved her own role as a solitary woman on a world stage dominated by men, and she's quoted as saying, "I will always remember her smile. That smile is unforgettable," said Camilla, who is married to King Charles III. A tide of people continue to stream into Parliament's Westminster Hall, where the Queen's coffin is lying in state. I think right now it will be removed there in a couple of, maybe in an hour's time or so. Draped in her royal standard and capped with a diamond-studded crown, the number of mourners has grown steadily since the public was first admitted on Wednesday, with a queue that stretches for at least 5 miles or 8 kilometers along the river Thames into Southwark Park in the city's southeast. So just a quick of what is happening there in UK today as the Queen's funeral, I think, gets underway. And over the past 4.5 days, of course, Westminster Hall has been a steady stream of silent tribute. That is where the Queen's body was lying there in state. And people from across UK and I guess other parts of the world had a chance to just pass there and give their tribute. There are people camping overnight in sleeping bags along the historic Long Walk in Windsor and other areas just to say goodbye And trains at a standstill in London, Paddington, with all GWR services delayed or cancelled due to a power shortage. There are also problems there. And I think a lot of outside Westminster Abbey, reporters from around the world beetle around with medallions of accreditations, dangling around their neck, ID for this and that, security everywhere. The scale and global interest in this kind of ceremonies and president and around 500 world leaders, as I said, will be gathering there to bid farewell. So, okay. I don't know if there's anything Tawi should like to say in line with this, even as we conclude the show. And I think later on we might be streaming live from London. We might be streaming live from there to just for our viewers. Is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Sorry, Miriam, I got an interruption from a call. And
it's okay.
I cannot really be able to trace exactly what you're asking.
No, the Queen today, the world will be saying goodbye to her today. And so I don't know if there's anything, we've seen a steady stream of people just going there to say their goodbyes. And of course, world leaders, even Kenyan President William Ruto left yesterday for that in the UK, and others. World leaders have been invited. I think very few of them will not go there. Maybe Putin, maybe President of Venezuela, perhaps President of Iran, I think. But everybody else of who is who in the world leadership will find their way at Westminster Abbey. Okay. Very well. So I don't know, is there anything you'd like to say to that? Because I'm done.
Well, Miriam, I think one thing that comes out very clear and loud is, of course, the kind of achievements, the kind of things that Queen Elizabeth II did do during her tenure and during the time when she lived. I think that is the most important thing we really need to underscore in terms of her legacy and how best even King Charles, the one who is taking over, Prince Charles rather, who is taking over from her, is able to live or to fit into the shoes of Queen Elizabeth II. That is very, very important. As the African people also will forever remember what Queen Elizabeth was able to do in terms of dealing with the issue of racial injustices in the world, and more so as pertains to the African continent. Because again, she vehemently fought the issue of racial injustices in the world, and more so, of course, coming out fully in support of the African people. And I remember the kind of so many of the disparaging remarks, even when I was going through history, because those were times when I was not even born, in the 1950 something or 60s early, if I got it right. When she even came out and danced with the then president of Ghana, Kwame Nkrumah, and she received a lot of criticism, especially coming from the Western world, really accusing her or saying how she's trying to demystify her position in the society and in the world. By even dancing or coming close to the African or the blacks for that matter. So I think she tried really to demystify the position of the kingdom, and also more so trying to try and fight the issue of racial injustices. And there's so much of of course, the many things that she did while in office. Those are some of the things really we will continue remembering her for. And we hope that even as Prince Charles really has taken over, he will be able to fit into her shoes and even do better than what the mom did. But generally, she was an amazing lady. We want to continue, of course, mourning with the rest of the world, and more so United Kingdom for the loss. But we want to hope that even through her death, and as even world leaders really congregate today to send her final, to give her final respect, that they'll be able to commemorate and remember her in terms of how her legacy is going to be fostered going forward, Miriam.
All right, thank you so much. And that marks the end of our show this morning. Shall be back here later on in the afternoon with more conversation from across the continent of Africa, and then later on we shall take you straight to the Westminster Abbey. And just a quick summary on what is expected. Life will come to a standstill for millions as the UK says goodbye to Queen Elizabeth II. Thousands of people are already lining the streets of the capital, with many more expected. The Queen's state funeral will take place at Westminster Abbey at 11 British Standard Time. Some of the 2,000 guests have already taken their seats. Foreign royals and world leaders will be at the service that will be watched by hundreds of millions globally. Afterwards, the Queen's coffin will be taken in a procession through London and then to Windsor Castle, where she will be laid to rest. Ahead of the funeral, King Charles said he had been deeply touched by public support for him and his family. Thank you so much, Samuel Tawish, for your time this morning. And of course, thank you so much, our viewers, for keeping us a company. My name is Miriam Mugutu. This has been Good Morning Africa. Bye-bye.